Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new installment of Guitar Hero Podcast. I want to say first off, thank you all for tuning in into the Chris Vance session. The last time we did this publicly, it won't be the last time. And I want to give a huge shout out to Asai to actually coming over to the session. Really would love to do more of these public events. Without further ado, I want to first introduce a man here, former Neversoft developer who not only worked as a MIDI designer, but as you all probably saw from my YouTube channel and from Guitar Hero 5, he did the motion capture for Carlos Santana. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Kyle Johnson over here. How's you going, sir?
Hey, everybody. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Well, Kyle, thank you for taking the time on this Saturday evening. I think it is 12 already. Yeah. So I want to say before we get started, could you please tell the audience who you are? What was your origins before you started working on the video game industry, and more specifically, Neversoft?
Oh, wow. Yeah, where does it start? Well, I always played video games growing up. I was addicted to the early coin-op games. I used to go to pizza shops with my dad and just play all kinds of stuff. I remember I was addicted to Donkey Kong and Tron and stuff, and just the lights and the music and the sound just really just captured me. So then I bugged them like crazy for video game consoles, and ended up, because I just turned 55 yesterday, so I'm going to talk about consoles that are super old, like the ColecoVision and the Intellivision and the Atari 2600 and all that stuff. And then I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, so I played music, moved to Los Angeles, was in the Air Force for a little while, and then I thought that if you just grabbed a train ticket and a guitar, you became a rock star. That didn't turn out to be true. So I started working on composing for films. That's a hard thing to get into. But when I was working on a film, a friend of mine was playing an Xbox game, and I kept distracting myself from the film by joining him on the game. And that was it. I thought, game and music. And I was like, why am I even trying for film? I should just be over here doing that. And then, I'm trying to really make a long story short. So that led me into video games. I then jumped on a few years later, I jumped on a server called Game Audio Network Guild. Looked for somebody in my local town, found somebody, and he put me under his wing. And next thing I know, I was on the Sims handheld games and Spore, or what was it called, Creatures or something like that. And then made friends through that. And that friend, Matt Pearsall, recommended me to Neversoft because he was doing a bunch of Tony Hawk stuff. And that's how I ended up there.
Well, that's very interesting. So I'm guessing that your first game would probably be Guitar Hero 3 Legends of Rock. Wouldn't that be the case since you were working as a MIDI designer? Since I wanted to ask, what were your tasks on Neversoft? It's specifically, what was your task? Did you do note tracking? Did you manage, the mixing audio for the songs?
Yeah, note tracking. We were all what we called MIDI designers. We decided upon a very lofty name, which made us feel a lot better. It's such an important role, and note tracking just seems such a kind of easy term. We were like, no, we're MIDI designers. So I was on that team. Occasionally we would get to look at mixes, but it was mostly just if we had some idea for something. There was another team that was doing a lot of that.
Interesting. And do you recall what was your first note tracking of a song?
Oh, wow. I don't recall the first one for Guitar Hero 3. And for Guitar Hero 3, I was kind of like the last MIDI designer to come in. So that game was almost ready to ship when I started. So a lot of that stuff was done, but I got my hands on a few things. I do remember what the test was. It was a Scorpion song. I think it was the first thing
That'd be rock like a hurricane.
Yeah, that was the test. And that was the first time I'd ever even thought about doing this. And I had to do it on a PlayStation 2. It was interesting back in the day to get hired. But that would be technically the first thing I ever noticed.
Was this like playing the game or like making the note track already?
It was making a note track so that you could get the job. They gave you some instructions and taught you how to set it up so you could do it independently. And so I created a note track. I think everybody got the same test.
So I wanted to know since we had Chris Vance in our last session. And I don't think I probably asked this, but I don't know. Do you ever understood about using DAW programming, which is the MIDI tools, with the equivalent of today that I personally used, and most of the Rock Band 3 custom authors as that they use Reaper. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. So I don't know. Do you ever knew exactly like how to tempo map? Do you have any idea what you would place? What would be like a 2-note chord, a 3-note chord, or well, you're technically like relying on 5 frets or like 5 buttons, and it's not like an actual guitar as of anything. So I'm guessing that you would probably have like a difficult time knowing how you would have the note tracks for any song that you were working in the past?
Yeah. Well, to go back to my history in college, I studied to be a performing musician and then also a studio hand. So I was already familiar with. At that time, they had just come out with digital audio like Alesis machines, but we were still working in certain softwares where we could, and then that grew into Pro Tools, and so I'd already had all this familiarity, and plus composing, I was already using things like Cubase. So I was familiar with DAWs, and Reaper being one of the later ones. I mean, it's been out a while now, but I never used Reaper. To answer your question about the buttons, and I don't know if I'm answering it correctly, but I was playing Guitar Hero a lot with a friend. We were just constantly playing Guitar Hero, and so I was pretty happy to get an opportunity to apply for a job there. And I took my guitar and the 5 buttons, and I put sticky notes on them of the notes like E, A, F sharp, and then I would go into my DAW and I would place notes in these places that would correspond to the colors of the buttons. That's how I did my test. I still have that guitar. I'll send you a picture. It's just one of the old PlayStation 2 guitars with all these
Oh, that's really funny.
notes written on it.
That's actually a very interesting way of going about it.
And
Thanks.
but personally, I've always like I always did my my custom note tracks. Like I literally just had to pretty much guess through ear, like basic music theory, and by like knowing like maybe which note would be higher or lower, what would be an octave and whatnot. I genuinely never thought of even doing stuff like that with my guitar, if anything. Which, speaking of which, you said that you were playing Guitar Hero with a friend ever since, like, before you even work on, I think, was it before Neversoft? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, like, what was your first exposure to Guitar Hero as a game? Was it to the first Guitar Hero game? Was it Guitar Hero 2, Roxy 80s, if you recall?
It was right out the gate. Yeah, the first one. Now, being a guitar player, this was an awesome opportunity to play what we thought was going to be playing guitar. It's funny because as a guitar player, that playing that controller can be rather difficult. Not being a guitar player, playing the controller is kind of like just, you just learn the controller. It was so fun. Yeah, Guitar Hero 1 was right out the gate. Bought it, friend came over, we were on the PlayStation, just started going.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty cool. So what would be your work on the next Guitar Hero game, which is Aerosmith? Have you ever did the note tracks for that game? Do you ever met Steven Tyler personally during the mocap sessions?
Yeah, we got to meet a lot of people because when we worked, everybody just kind of passed through the hallway. We had this kind of a warehouse building with these like glass oval shaped offices. And so you constantly saw everybody walking through and you got to meet them. And, even going to the bathroom, I met some people. You just walk in, you're like, whoa, that's Joe Perry. Check that out. It was really cool. To tell you the truth, it's going really far back in my memory, but I was, fully engrossed to the company by that time. So we were working on a lot of songs. But I remember doing, what did they have? What did we have? It was like a guitar challenge. There was a Joe Perry one for that. I note tracked.
Guitar battles.
Yeah. I did the Joe Perry guitar battle on that one. I remember that.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting. How much were you actually, let's say, able to pretty much mess around with the stems of the songs if you were giving when doing the note trackings? Where you were able to pretty much edit the panning? Were you able to edit the volume gains? And if you want to hear like a specific guitar solo, because I remember one of the Guitar Hero 3 mixes, I think had their guitar mix kind of a little bit loud. I think it was like probably they all went down to Georgia, but I'm going to bet it was just an internal script in the game and not actually editing the audio file. So I wanted to ask how much of freedom can you edit the stems if it doesn't give you into any troubles with the label or like Sony or whatever.
Yeah, that's a complicated question because it always depended upon the label or the band. And also we had our in-house mix engineers. So they would hand us audio, if I remember correctly, or we'd get a project and the audio would already be in there. And we could make adjustments, obviously. The biggest thing that we would do is make suggestions back. We had such cool guys working on the mixes. Dave Rowe, Tim, of course, gosh, I'm 55 now. Names are like not coming as quickly as they used to, but terrible that I can't think of the person I'm trying to think of right now, but it'll come to me and I'll bring it up. Anyway, what we would do is we'd get the projects, we'd drop in the audio files, I think. We would listen closely. That was always the fun time, getting the stems and being able to hear like Eddie Van Halen by himself. It's incredible. And we'd make suggestions back. They were always taken in. The guys were so cool. I even remember making suggestions on songs where I thought, hey, there's a guitar part in the background. Can we bring it up? And in that case, they did. I remember that with the Steely Dan song.
Do It Again.
Yeah, Do It Again. That's one I got to work on as well. Of the many, it was just, I love that band. So I was really kind of pretty grossed in on that. But one thing that you had mentioned that I think is important is we always had the freedom to do any song we wanted to. So I love Radiohead, and I thought, I want to bring in Paranoid Android. And so I note tracked all that. Some people did TV show themes. Just super. Yeah, had so much fun just making our own custom note tracks. I even had a suggestion for Jazz Hero, and I did like Summertime and a bunch of like Wes Montgomery stuff and just things that people that I really dig. But we would just play them around the studio. Yeah, of course, the producers would look at it. I remember suggesting being a crazy Pink Floyd fan, like so many people are, but I'm kind of weirdly crazy about them. I was trying so hard to get Pink Floyd in the game, and it was just difficult because David Gilmour, although being a brilliant guitar player, it doesn't translate to the game very well. I love the band Mogwai, tried to bring them in, and we had already used Mogwai and Tony Hawk, so we had some relationship with them. But some bands were just not going to translate very well to the gameplay. And I remember Alan Flores taught me something amazing that he might have shared here. He said, "Get to the fun," and I use that philosophy in my life even to this day, which is, we can get bogged down in all the details and all the, all that color's not right or the timing's not quite perfect. But if you focus on just getting to the fun, all those other things answer themselves. And that would happen when we would suggest bands. We go, okay, we'll get to the fun on that Mogwai song. And I go, oh yeah, there's like a 3-minute intro to this song. I'm not having any fun yet until the guitars kick in. So a lot of these things will kind of muster themselves out because not that they aren't amazing bands, but just they didn't translate well with the game.
Oh,
I answered your question.
No, yeah, definitely. Thank you. So, speaking of bands, now that we're into that, so you're the next game, Guitar Hero World Tour, which is practically the response to Harmonix's Rock Band, since you guys pretty much took over the franchise with Guitar Hero 3. So I wanted to ask, like, do you ever have the chance to not only do the guitar note tracking, but also as the drums note tracking, the bass note tracking, and this is where I actually wanted to talk about this, because in your LinkedIn page, I saw that you and other 2 or 3 people helped develop the vocal engine from World Tour and onward. So I wanted to ask, like, what was the idea that you guys had, and like how you guys wanted the, sync through a Logitech microphone USB and make it work in game? Because to be frank, I'm just gonna say this: like, the World Tour vocal engine has aged terribly. Like, genuinely, it's just actually the worst offender is the PC port, which is our mod, the World Tour Definitive Edition, is based on, because there's like a huge delay in game by, I think it was probably by Aspire, who made a very sloppy job at doing that. So I don't know. I wanted to ask about you developing with other people this new feature for the next game and the franchise.
Yeah, well, the engine itself, I may be incorrect here, was primarily created by Travis Chen, just a brilliant guy. And we then started to bring like testing, how are we going to make it better? How are we going to do, how's it going to noise suppress? How's it going to accurately figure out what the vocal line is of people? And as that went on, I had, before I got into video games, I had a whole career as a software developer. And so I applied that in places where they would let me, and let me mess with the code a little bit. But it was mostly driven by, I think, I know there was more than just Travis Chin, but he was kind of like our point of contact for it. I think it was his engine initially, and then we all developed it over time by adding in suggestions, and we did everything in scripting. And then, well, for World Tour, they split into teams, and I ended up on the audio or the vocal team, which was super fun. In the early days, though, we still had some assignments where we were doing guitar, we were doing the bass. I never did drums. Guitar and bass was always, in unison. You did them both, what team you're on. And then went over to the vocal team, and man, I had so much fun. It's such a great, I think that was the best team. Tell the other guys I said that's the best team, vocal team. The rest of them were meh.
That kind is like if October, if it's okay, if I can have one real quick. That kind of is a nice segue. Speaking of how y'all took suggestions for the vocal engine, that's an interesting point to me, because I know in the tutorials for World Tour and onward, when it tells you how to like sing into it, like the octave doesn't really matter. Was that a design choice that was initially part of the engine, or did the octave like indifference not come until later? Like, did you have to sing in the octave that it was originally being pitched in the vocal chart?
If I remember correctly, that was something that was a challenge right away, and we realized that how do you track somebody accurately if they're out of the octave? Like if you got a high singer, like somebody's doing a Taylor Swift song or something, and it's a guy singing, how do you do that? Yeah, that was a consideration right away, was that you didn't have to be in the octave. I don't remember if the game came out initially and you had to. We changed it later. That I don't remember. But
I remember in the World Tour tutorial dialogue, the vocalist's name, I think his character name is Ricky Lee, if memory serves. He tells you if you can't seem to get it, try singing a whole octave higher or lower. So I'm guessing it did come with World Tour.
Yeah, that's all sounded familiar to me too. And then we tightened that up. It got better, but apparently it got really bad now. Did not it?
No, or it gets better. It gets better. So thankfully, the
issue that most people had with the World Tour, and like the one from World Tour specifically, October, if you don't mind, was that like it was like scored you really harshly. Like you had to sing pretty much like every note like 100% in order to get 100%. Whereas like go Metallica and onward, they switched to like just hitting like I guess it was 95% or 90% of the whole phrase or something like that.
I remember that.
Oh yeah, and that'll be. Thank you for bringing that up. That'll give me a good question for when we get to Guitar and Metallica. So anyway, continue.
How about we segue to Guitar and Metallica? So you now finally into the next game, you finally have one of the greatest metal bands of all time, Metallica. I think, were you by any chance like part of the camera mocap in one of the end around songs, like Master of Puppets and like I don't know, maybe Creeping Death or something? No.
The only mocap I had was Carlos Santana.
We'll get into that later. But so I don't know. I wanted to ask, like, I don't know, what was your experience working on Guitar Hero Metallica, and how do you have to improve the engine, especially with the vocal engine and whatnot? So I don't know if obviously if you actually had like some contribution with the game after that, obviously, but
Oh, I tell you what, there's a lot to talk about on the Guitar Hero Metallica game. First of all, arguably that's, I think, the best Guitar Hero game that we put out. A lot of it was because Metallica protected us from any upper influences. So when Guitar Hero 3 came out, we were pretty much left alone, as far as I understand, by Activision. Just kind of make it work, make it cool, make the guitar wireless, and then it blew up. And so then they were like, well, let's get involved a little bit. Let's see if we can guide this. There was a lot of contract stuff where if you got this song, you had to take that other song. That wasn't obviously something I was involved in, but that was what was happening behind the scenes at the studio, a lot of negotiations. And when Metallica came in, I remember there were some songs they wanted to put on the game that I heard through the rumor mill where Activision was like, we don't want to do that. And Metallica said, well, you're going to do it. And so we did it. And that was the best. Because Metallica said, you're not going to, we want to do this game too, but, we're only going to do it our way. I love that. And it backed off some of that stuff. The biggest thing that I used to crack up so I didn't listen to Metallica. I'd heard like one album back in the 80s, Justice for All or something.
Yeah, and Justice for All.
Yeah. And they just weren't on my radar. As we were talking about earlier, I always liked kind of a little bit bands out of a different genre or jazz stuff. And so they weren't really on my radar. And I became an instant fan, not out of any need to, but just out of like tearing their stuff apart and hearing the guitars by itself, the drums by itself, and the songwriting and how it was a whole different thing. The way they were writing music was completely different than what I was used to. Measures that lasted longer, playing over the measures, but in, I don't know, just different way that they wrote music. And I remember I got I say Call of Cthulhu, but I think they call it Call of Cthulhu because of the way it's spelled. Yeah. And I was like, this song is really badass. And I like H.P. Lovecraft stuff, so I thought that was pretty cool. But, James Hetfield goes, at the end all the time. And we had to like, how do we deal with that? and when you're listening to the song over and over and over, that can become pretty tedious hearing that little thing he has. So we teased a lot. We had a lot of fun just like teasing. Or we'd get bands that had nonsense lyrics and we would imitate them in the studio and go, and because we didn't know what the heck that we're singing. We just had so much fun. But yeah, Metallica was so cool. That band, they even invited us up to the Cow Palace in San Francisco for a friends and family pre-tour show. So it was only like 700 people there or something. And they're like asking us, should we include that song on the tour? People, we were cheering yes for everything. What an incredible band. What an incredible bunch of guys. Can't say enough good things about them. And they really presented us a challenge and also kind of protected us from letting us make the game that we wanted to make.
So speaking of challenge, I hate to interrupt October, but speaking of challenge, you mentioned earlier the way, and it's a very, I'm glad you pointed out James Hetfield's style of singing, because I can only imagine how that must have felt to try to vocal chart that, to try to pitch that correctly, especially in certain points. Yeah, that's got to be really weird to do. But that was going to leave me with something. So obviously we know the vocal engine got improved as time goes on, like naturally with as things age, they start to get iterated on and improved upon. But that was going to lead me into a segue. With the way the Metallica vocal engine was designed and going forward, it had a string of text that would pop up next to the multiplier that would actually tell you a result grade, like solid, excellent, average, compared to World Tour, which only has a color flash. Was that another suggestion, or was it something you guys thought of?
I don't know where that came from, but it was certainly welcome. Yeah. We found that we were really too tough. In the early games, we were so precise and you had to be right on, like you guys mentioned, you had, especially the vocal engine, because the way it was designed, we had to learn from the design. We had to start off with what we thought was right, and then we're like, this is really going to be difficult for people to do, and we're testing it like crazy. No, some of us can sing, some of us can't, like this guy right here. So we'd torture each other through that. But even we saw it as developers that this was going to be really hard to do. But you got to start somewhere, and it's easier to take away than it is to add to in the case of something like this. Not like cooking, it's easier to add than it is to take away. But this is kind of the reverse. So we started at a higher bar, saw how people liked it, and then made adjustments in-house because of our own suggestions. We would always listen to the fan base. There was lots of forums out there talking about information we would take in. And yeah, we started simplifying things, or not simplifying, easing our detail.
Yeah, because I can definitely vouch for the fact that in World Tour, expert vocals are like incredibly precise.
You're SI. You remember if they actually did grade each note individually, or was it like?
Yeah. Well, in the game, you can see the thing fluttering up and down as you're singing. You can see the note coming across, and they got the fluttering. How you're doing. We would tighten that flutter up depending upon the level that you were playing at. So if you're an expert, we thought that was the right way to do it. It's like, if you're an expert, you really got to hit it. But there's just so many parameters that goes into a voice for that tonality. And the more that we would try to make room for the differences in tonality, the harder it was to stay right on, unless you were the person that sang it and it was that take. When you're recording music, you might sing that song 5-6 times, maybe even more, and they'll choose one take. So even the artists themselves can't repeat their perfect take. And it was outside of my team where those changes were being made, but we had a lot of talks about it, or a lot of feedback, a lot of team meetings, a lot of editing that we were going to do to the engine to get it to be a little bit better.
Interesting. So I want to talk about, I want to ask, whenever you were note tracking a song, whether it would be vocal, guitar, or bass, whenever you were play testing them, or maybe anybody else from the QA test, do you ever had an encounter where you would have like a broken note where, you would see that there's like a 2-note chord, but in reality there's this note that's just out of place, and it just so happens to like a 2-note chord? Do you ever had that encounter before, or maybe it was like some bug with the game during development? Have you ever encountered anything like that?
Not that I can remember. I'm sure we ran into all kinds of stuff like that. But I don't really remember personally that happening.
Okay. So yeah, let's just. So before we head into Guitar Hero 5, you might probably know that there was 2 other Guitar Hero games, but, they were not exactly developed by you guys. It was actually done by Beanox with Smash Hits, and then there was the one that was actually released like 2 or 3 months after Guitar Hero 5, which is Guitar Hero Van Halen by Underground Development. So, you told something that caught my interest, which is that you would receive stems from Eddie Van Halen playing songs. Did you guys ever had any involvement with the note tracking for either of those games? Because from what I understand, at least, is that Underground and Beanox did their own note tracking, or at least that's what's supposed to be the idea, from what I've heard.
Yeah, that is the case. But we did get a hold of. Again, it's been a few years. Thank you for mentioning that earlier. Was it 16 years or something?
Yeah, it would be 14 years for the Smash Hits and other stuff. Van Halen and Jade.
My daughter was 3 then at this time. This is how I track everything. So if I remember correctly, and there's other people who'll know more about this than me, we had the possibility of releasing Guitar Hero Van Halen. And so they came to our mocap stage and did all the work. Which was a real special time for me because I was definitely a fan of Van Halen.
And you sent me a picture of Eddie Van Halen performing like a few months ago. Very detailed, actually, and thank you for that. Do you remember? Obviously, if you don't, but do you remember or do you speculate which song he was singing when you took that picture, or maybe somebody else took that picture?
No, yeah, I didn't take that picture, but we shared pictures around. I don't know which song it was. But I got to be involved in the mocap side of it because they wanted somebody. So they recorded the mocap of the band, and then they asked Eddie to come back. So they had an idea to mocap his fingers, but they wanted to test it on somebody. So they said, who's willing to come over here, and we're going to super glue balls to your fingers? And I was like, me, 100%. So they super glued all these balls on my hands, and I'm trying to play Eruption, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is. But I have some Van Halen stories that I just love to share.
Oh, we have enough time, so if you like to share some, we would love to hear those.
Well, I would just say, I bet that was a nightmare getting those balls off the fingers if they were super glued onto you.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of glue they used. It felt like super glue when they came off. But yeah, I had a couple of like raw spots where the skin went with it, but it was worth it. So I did the mocap thing, and oh my gosh, there's so many stories about Eddie Van Halen. He was just so cool. I got to go to his house for a guitar lesson. It was incredible. He was just such a nice guy. But I think my favorite story of him is after, he's now going to come in. They got a trailer out back. He's coming in. He's going to do the mocap for the fingers. And they did some individual mocap where they stand inside that like machine that goes around you and get your whole body and stuff. And I had this shirt that had an equalizer on it and it had a little like microphone and a pack on the back. So if I stood near some music, my shirt would just start bouncing. And every time he walked by me, he would slap me somewhere to try to find where the microphone was, which is really funny. But he was just so nice. I did some faux pas, like trying to like break the ice with him. I said, hey, I like collecting guitars. I said, what's your oldest guitar? And he looked at me like I was an idiot, but he was just joking. And he goes, Frankenstein. I'm like, oh yeah, of course it is. But my favorite story of him was, I think it was like day 2. I think we had him come in for a couple of days. And I can't thank Kristen and Jeff and Billy enough for letting me come back to the mocap stage. Because I did the finger thing, they said, you're coming back and you're going to hang out. And you're going to watch this happen. So I thought, well, great. Because normally the mocap stage was kind of a closed set. And so I was there, and we used to order our lunches. They'd always buy us lunch at Neversoft. By the way, did you see my old, here we go. Look at that.
Hey, that's awesome.
I had to wear it for you guys. We ordered our lunch, and I was sitting on this lawn chair, and I was about to get started eating, and Eddie Van Halen came in, and he sat down right beside me. And he just started noodling on his guitar, and I remember thinking, geez, just him warming up he's playing better than I've ever played. 20 years of playing guitar. And I didn't say anything to him, and he didn't say anything to me. And we're just sitting there. They're setting up the stage, all kinds of people running around getting things ready to go. He's just warming up. And then he goes, without even looking at me, he goes, are those onion rings? And I go, yeah. Would you like one? And he goes, yeah. And I held my plate out, and his fingers were like little snakes. They just went through all of my onion rings, and then he pulls all of my onion rings out. There's like 4 onion rings on each finger. And then he starts eating my onion rings, and I go, oh, all right, I guess I'm not having onion rings for lunch. I guess I'll have this like salad sandwich or something I didn't really want. I was looking forward to the onion rings. So a little later in the day, everybody's relaxed. He's having fun. He's showing me his pedal board because they set up the pedal board. I don't remember why, but they had him set up his pedal board.
It's on the floor, right? Because that's like Guitar Hero Van Halen did have that pedal board. Funny enough, so yeah, pretty much for that reason.
Yeah, so we're standing over there and we're talking about pedals, and I just decided to be a little bit of a wild dude, and I go, you ate all my onion rings. You owe me something, right? And I thought I was going to get like a signature, And while to backtrack a little bit, is while he was eating my onion rings, he said, "What's your favorite Van Halen song?" And I said, "On Fire. I love Van Halen 1. I play On Fire all the time." And he hands me his guitar and he says, "Show me how to do the lead." And I was like messing it up. And I was tapping like this, like pulling. And he's like, "No, no, 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 no." He goes, "It's economy of motion. You just kind of push down, turn your hand around and tap like this." And all of a sudden I was doing it. And then he goes, "That's not how I did the lead." And I go, "Oh, okay, show me." So when we were back, he never did. So when we were back at the pedal board and I said, you owe me something for eating all my onion rings. He goes, "Well, come to my house and I'll show you how to play On Fire." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So we exchanged information and I went to his house, played guitar in his garage. It was incredible.
My God. It's incredible that you actually spent some
Can I
time
ask
with
one
him.
question related to mocap?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So with Van Halen, in the song Jump, David Lee Roth does a jump. And I'm just wondering, did he do that himself or was that done by another actor? I've always wondered that.
Oh, it's got to be him because, we would see them. Now, this was a different time. Eddie Van Halen was in the future, but this was back when they were recording as a full band. We would sneak so our lunch area and the mocap stage kind of shared a giant warehouse area, and they put up these black curtains to separate the kind of lunch area from we had a half pipe back there as well, so there were rules like don't go skateboarding, we're doing mocap. And we would look through the curtains and man, David Lee Roth was all over the place, just jumping and screaming and yelling. Yeah. Never asked with that guy.
Yeah, that was literally the only footage of Guitar Hero Van Halen mocap is done by a former Neversoft animator called Justin Parrish. You probably remember who that guy is.
Man, love that guy. I haven't seen him in years.
Yeah, which is funny because, like in Guitar Hero Metallica, you could see some behind-the-scenes footages, but in reality, in Guitar Hero Van Halen, they don't have any footages of them doing mocap or anything. And even after that, a lot of people were speculating if it was either actually the actual band themselves doing that, or it could have been like a tribute band. But thankfully, thanks to like a picture of Adam Jennings taking a picture with David Lee Roth, and then like he sent me another picture with Eddie Van Halen with the mocap suit on, and plus the video, then it's like already answers the question. And not only that, but your story, and I'm not sure if you saw the video with Jeff Swinty where he had that unfortunate encounter with the pole that day.
No.
Oh yeah, I remember him telling us about that. It was like he got hit with a flagpole, didn't he?
Yes, and the camera got tracked. Kind of feel bad for telling it already, but yeah. So obviously, like it's really important that you guys tell us that because a lot of people still don't think Van Halen did it, and to be honest, like actually, you know what? This is a really good question. So you guys were you thought you were going to get Van Halen for the next game, and then apparently Underground was going to be the company to do the development, but in reality, you guys just shared your engine with those guys, and then like I don't know, do you remember if it was going to be the case where Neversoft could make like their own Guitar Hero Metallica, or or anything like that?
Well, Guitar Hero Van Halen, yeah, we I like I was saying earlier, I'm pretty sure we were slated to just do it in house. And maybe it was also the early days of Activision having multiple studios do games like they do Call of Duty. They've got like 5 studios now doing different Call of Duties. And so for Guitar Hero, this is right when they first started looking at other studios to do stuff. And I don't know if they just handed them the game to get them started. I don't know if there was some deal that Joel had to cut to say, hey, we don't have time to do this one because we're putting out games every 6 months.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's as I recollect, that's why we had stems. That's why they came to us for mocap, is because initially the idea was that we were going to do Guitar Hero Van Halen.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, to be honest, Activision was already like milking you guys out of the games' franchise, so I couldn't really be surprised. Which I want to know if anything before we get to the next game. But do you had any involvement with Smash Hits, which is the one that Beanox had in development for? Do you actually have the stems for, like, I don't know, like some of the past masters? Which actually, I think you already probably knew, but the first the first 3 Guitar Hero games, which is 1, 2, and Roxy A's. They're all covers by Wave Group, and I don't know. I always seen that you like do a lot of mixing from what I've seen in your background. So I want to know, what was your opinion with having Wave Group doing the covers, and now Beanox just having the master tracks to do all in a full band this time. If anything, I would love to hear your opinion about that.
Yeah. No, hold on. Throat is.
Yeah.
I think I'm coming down with a little cold, actually. I was impressed with the sound-alikes. I think wasn't it like Primus who was the only band that sent original stems to the earliest Guitar Hero 1, I guess, maybe it's Guitar Hero 2.
In the main tablet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bonus are always masters.
I gotcha. Yeah, well, their sound-alikes were so convincing sometimes. I think it was like an Ozzy song or something. I thought it was really like, it was like the band went in and, I thought they went in and did it again for the game because the sound-alike was so convincing. Yeah, they did a great job with those.
Oh yeah, actually, with doing re-recordings, there's in Guitar Hero Metallica and in 3, obviously, you have Cult of Personality re-recorded. You would have Ace of Spades re-recorded, Evil re-recorded, and all whatnot. So I don't know. Do you ever met or had the chance to like actually have the first preview on those re-recordings before they were published into the game? Or even actually, because I already know that Evil, the re-recording of Evil by King Diamond, that's actually on Spotify at this point right now. So I want to know if you ever heard it like first exclusive before the game was published and all that.
Oh yeah, and there's also I think, wasn't there a re-recording of Dream on Guitar Hero Aerosmith?
Yes. That as well.
Yeah, we heard those. Whatever we worked with, if that was the re-recording, that's what we ended up working with. Yeah. But if it was a re-record for some for 1, 2 or Rock the 80s, we didn't get any access to that stuff. Not that I remember.
No, that's completely fine. So, all right. Next game, Guitar Hero 5. How do you get the role for it to be Carlos Santana, if anything?
Oh boy, who? I just love Santana, and it was known that I was a big kind of weirdo about how good a guitar player he is. We used to have these conversations about of course, musicians are musicians anyway. We're like, who's the best band in the world? Yeah. And when you're working on a game like Guitar Hero where we have to put songs in the band, we would get super opinionated. Like, no, I'm a bigger fan, And I think I just lobbied and throughout the years accidentally just being a big Santana fan. So something went around the studio and they said, we need somebody to mocap Santana. And if I remember correctly, it was Santana couldn't make it. Santana wanted to do it, but couldn't do it. I don't know why. And so it felt like there was an emergency. And was it the same time that Dallas did
Kurt Cobain? Yes.
Kurt Cobain, yeah, same game. So I think he did Kurt Cobain first, and then they came around and said, we need somebody to do Santana. And it felt, like I said, like it was sudden, like it was an emergency, like he was supposed to be here this week or something. I really don't remember how quickly it came from me hearing about it and putting on a suit, but it seemed really fast. And I know I had a day or two to study Santana. I'm left-handed. He's right-handed, and he stands differently than I do. I play guitar right-handed, but still my feet go in certain ways. And whenever you watch that mocap, or whenever I see the mocap and that cool thing you put together, I remember the shuffling of my feet. I was constantly trying to put my feet the way he would do it, which isn't the way I would stand. You can see all this like tap dance that I'm doing, trying to get it right. And just studying his moves, the way he looks at the sky when he does stuff. I only had like a day to like really think about it, but I love Santana. So I ended up getting the gig.
So this is a very good question to ask. So was this before or after the fact that you knew that you were going to note track the what was it, the 1990 what live version was this? I have this on my phone. Give me a second. It was let me see. Yeah, it was from Sacred Fire live in South America. It was what year? 1993. So was it before or after the fact that you would do the note tracking, or maybe somebody else did the note tracking, or at least knew that the song, it was going to be that specific version or the mix of that song? So I wanted to hear your perspective, like how it went through with that.
Yeah, somebody else note tracked it. We definitely had the song playing around that we were going to do the mocap to, and so we knew which song it was going to be beforehand, and then I would watch. But I didn't watch any like specific video related to that song on YouTube. I would just kind of dig up stuff. I think it was YouTube. I assume it was YouTube. And just watch performances of him in general. But yeah, we already had that song.
So you never actually like studied the actual live performance, because as of now, like there's actual live footage of that same performance. I don't know. I thought you actually saw the videos, but realistically, that would probably be not the case, and you had to basically kind of pinpoint how you would probably play. Which I actually want to ask, since when doing mocap, were you absolutely kind of timid or shy or not, or kind of preoccupied that how your performance would impact in the end result of the game where it was being launched, if anything? Also, how many takes did you actually do it? You said it was like more than 5 or 6, probably.
Oh, well, if you ask me, the first one was perfect. I mean, of course I did it. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, it was at least 5 or 6 takes, but it's such an alien world to be in, to stand on the stage, even with friends. These are all my friends who are filming it, and to stand there and pretend that you're somebody else is such a big imposter syndrome moment. But Jeff Swinty really did a great job of getting me to loosen up, and he's just full of all this excitement. You've met him, and he's just full of energy and kindness and positivity. And he's like, and what was great about Jeff's direction is that any time, as I loosened up, I would do things like, at one point I pointed at the camera, which isn't a Santana a move, and Jeff went nuts. He's like, "That's so cool," and I was like, and it makes you feel like, oh, okay, I'll do some other stuff, and
Man, Jeff's so cool.
He is awesome. As a matter of fact, he was why I threw my phone on the floor. He's texting me, and I'm like, "Leave me alone." I didn't say leave me alone, but I was like, I got to toss this phone. You're going to hear it buzz. I think he sees me on Discord. That's why. He just kept making me feel better about the performance. And I've seen Santana in concert more than 10 times. I love Santana. And so I was just kind of referencing in my mind videos I watched the day before, referencing in my mind all the times I've seen him in concert. But when I became relaxed in the mocap thing is when I just allowed myself to kind of be me. Like, how would you perform? That's why my feet kept moving and pointing at the camera and just trying to be bigger. That was another thing. You had to be bigger. You couldn't be quiet and move a little. You had to move. You had to really get into it, because that's what was going to be portrayed on the screen, and that just those body movements alone add excitement. So Jeff was 100% just telling me all the time, that was a cool move. That's so cool. Do that again. I remember backing away from the mic. I used to play live music a lot, and backing away from the microphone was just because I would sing backup. I would just back away from the microphone. And when you watch Carlos, he kind of just stands still. He's not moving around the stage a lot. So Jeff was into that too, or looking over at the band, which was something that would just seem natural to do, was not something that a lot of people were doing in the mocap. They were just staying right on the thing. And so that Jeff was just a great director.
Oh, I would imagine. Yeah, so interesting. I actually wanted to ask, because since you're such a big Carlos Santana fan, how much do you had to learn, because you obviously had to mimic a guitar at least, how do you actually have like the guitar taps for the song, or where to put your hand on in any fret, Because I know it's obviously like important to actually like mimic where you would, play a chord and whatnot. So I would love to know if by doing that, that would probably mimic the performance well enough.
Yeah, well, I could play that song right now on that guitar. I just love playing Santana stuff. Grew up learning those leads, learning those riffs, and so that song was not alien to me at all. I already knew how to play it.
Interesting. Speaking of a guitar, I was searching through like some on Instagram with hashtag Guitar Hero, and then I saw an interesting post that you made like a few years ago, like from 2018. You may probably know what I'm talking about, but on here it says, on this guitar, many Guitar Hero games were developed. We all brought in our own instruments, but this was the Neversoft studio guitar we all shared to figure out parts for the note tracks. And you pretty much give out the shout out to the company. So, I mean, it's not obviously the same Guitar Hero, the PS2 guitar, but I wanted actually to know, because that actually got me genuinely curious. Was that like another key point to figuring out how to note track like certain notes for the game and whatnot?
Yeah, that guitar is downstairs. I can go grab it for you. That somehow this guitar just showed up in our room, and we all were just playing, and that was absolutely key to it. Is when you're note tracking, as you guys well know, sometimes you'll have a line that's like da 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 da, and you're like, where do I roll over? Where do I start back down, or do I go all the way back? Do I use all five and go back to the first and back to five and back to the first?
So many times when charting custom songs, I've done that so many times.
It's such a hard decision to make, and so we would learn. I know what I would do. I can only speak for myself, but I would learn the lead, and then I would say, okay, well, how about if I play that lead just up here and but the same notes, so I'm up an octave, but I'm on lower strings. What's that look like? Can I just go and what I would do is try to take a lead that may be like this, and I'd try to stack it into one area, because that would be like my 5 notes. And when I would be kind of repeating the note, like say it starts on E and then it goes an octave to E, I would know I'm going to go back to that button again. So that would teach me how to kind of just use those 5 buttons to do big leads. And having a guitar to practice on, to learn the lead, bends and stuff like that were just a nightmare to deal with. How are you going to get around a bend? Can you just slide the note up and back down again, and that's going to be the bend? So that way on the guitar, that would translate from one button to the other and back to the button again as a way to bend. And these are all the different techniques that I would use to try to encapsulate something big into a small 5-button field.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense actually. So, speaking of Guitar Hero 5, you guys made some massive improvements, not only with the vocal engine, but the whole entire engine as well, because you all had the whole party mode where you can not only have like 2 guitars or 3 guitars, you can have the entire band. Like you can have 4 vocals, 3 drummers, and 1 bass and whatnot. So I don't know. I wanted to ask, like, do you remember specifically, because we all know the World Tour vocal engine wasn't exactly the most feasible in a sense on playing it. In World Tour, you couldn't even know if you even finished singing a phrase. That's one of the key features I've seen from Guitar Hero 5, where you would always fill up the MIDI note, and you would see like the little bar that goes from yellow or red, yellow, and then to green. So I don't know, like, was that like something that you guys thought would be better to add it, or was it something, I don't know, from the community like Score Hero that probably suggested this little fix up for the next game in the entry?
Yeah, because the games beforehand, the only thing you had was a color flash, like on World Tour. That was all neat. It was around the fireball. You had a flash of color, tell you remote, or the vocal was all text in like Metallica, Smash Hits, and Van Halen.
Yeah, I don't remember why that change happened. I know it was welcome, and we were always listening to the community. So I have a feeling that that probably came from just good suggestions on how to make the game better.
Yeah. You know what, Addy, do you want to ask him something before we move to the next big 2 games of anything?
So I was just kind of wondering, what was the best thing about making this engine, and what might have been the frustrating thing about this engine?
The detail was definitely the frustrating thing. Trying to tighten that up and figure out how to make it fun, get to the fun. See, that was tough. Get to the fun for the vocal engine was so hard because, again, tell the guys, anybody you meet, the vocal team was the best team. I just want to clear that up. We had to bust our rear ends to get everything to work. And Brian Marvin, who was really just brilliant. I don't know if you guys have met Brian. Great person, great positive attitude, kept us going, just great. I love to sing. It was funny because he's got like this bunch of hair and like camo shorts on, and then he's singing like Hannah Montana. It was really funny just to watch him. But the engine was so difficult to refine to fun. That's about the easiest way to say it. We had to make it accurate, but then if we made it accurate, it was frustrating. Also trying to figure out what to sing. I remember I was working on a song. I want to think it was one of the Seattle bands. Lane Staley singing? What's the name of that band? Maybe it was them. Anyway, I had note tracked a part, and we used to come in and ask people from. Here's something we always used to ask people from the entire studio. We didn't care if it was a custodian. We didn't care if it was, somebody who's helping us get paid. Whoever it was, we were like, come in and sing. And I remember Alan Flores came in saying, it's just such a funny story, just coming to me. And it kind of answers your question. Sorry if it's a little long-winded, but I had note tracked this song, and I said, okay, here's what I hear. And because the song has a bunch of tracks of vocals, the person who double tracked it didn't track it the same every time. So there were certain notes they went to on this one. There's certain notes it went to on that one. It might have been tracked like 3 times, 3 different streams of the vocal. And in my ear, I hear this one, but in Alan's ear, he heard this one. So when he started singing it, he was like, well, that's not the way I sing that song. This was a major, major thing that we had to deal with, was just because you sing it this way doesn't mean that I sing it this way when I'm in the car. And so Alan and I put a whiteboard up, and we said, come in, sing this one, sing A, and sing B. And like maybe Alan's suggestion is A and mine is B. We're trying to kind of trick people so they don't know which ones that come in from the vocal team. Mine won by 1 person. I think 25 people sang, and only 1 person more sang it the way that I heard it. And yeah, just tell Alan he was wrong, please, when you see him. I need something here. Just tell him.
So,
but it was difficult.
So speaking of like singing Hannah Montana pop songs, the next game, which is Band Hero, which is very interesting from what I've heard from Chris Vance, because everybody from who had ever done the note track has always been into like rock or metal music, and then you guys had to sort out with doing like pop old songs. You had Jackson 5, Marvin Gaye, and Taylor Swift and Maroon 5. So I don't know, do you ever have like any recommendation for a pop song that you would put in Band Hero? Also, there was a funny recommendation. I forgot which song was it that was officially quote unquote to be confirmed in Band Hero 2. It was I forgot the name of that song, but it was still.
I swear I think I know what you're talking about, and I forgot what it is. And wasn't it called like? Wasn't it Focus or something like that?
Focus. Yeah. It was Focus. So yeah, like I don't know. Do you ever had any suggestions, or I don't know? Do you thought about like any pop songs that it would eventually turn into in a Guitar Hero game specifically?
Not me personally. I remember that project being run by Jody. She did an amazing job. What a great producer. And when we would work on that song or that game, the songs were already in place. There were some standout moments. Maroon 5, they were really nice. Anybody who came in was really nice. Honestly, there wasn't a single person that wasn't cool that came to the studio. But Taylor Swift came in, and she had just won a Grammy or something. And so we all surprised her by when she came in the door from the trailer, we were all standing there saying congratulations. And I'll never forget, she came up to every single person, asked your name, shook your hand, said thank you, talked to you a little bit about your life. Really, really amazing person. That Band Hero was, it felt like it went really fast, that game. I don't have as many detailed memories of it. It was there's some of those games we felt like we were really down to the last minute trying to get this thing out, and Jody just had that ship tight. It was really flowed really well. That's basically the most I remember about Band Hero.
I guess I'd understand the speed about it, considering the sheer frequency you guys put those games out back then, which unfortunately proved to be its Achilles heel.
Yeah. That's a weird thing about these. That's one of those Activision involvements too. You know, we're grateful for it because we all had a job doing something creative and super cool. And I remember when I entered the game industry, I couldn't believe the quality. Again, I used to be a programmer and I was working with a lot of brilliant people and artists as well who were making software. But when I entered Neversoft, and I'd been independent before Neversoft, and then I was independent after Neversoft. I mean, I went to Vicarious Visions for a short time. When I saw the sheer just passive talent of programmers and artists and stuff, it opened my mind that you can create something, you know, that's going to sell millions of copies and make millions of dollars, and you can do it at the highest level in 6 months if you get the right people. I was just flabbergasted by how talented everybody is, and then of course it raises your game too. You know, you have to be on it now because there's really talented people depending upon you to put out something good. And I think that's what happened with Band Hero is we just kind of all our producers were good. Jody was just something special, and that game just flowed, and next thing you know, we were done. But back to putting them out every 6 months, I think that became an Achilles heel because Activision was like, here's all these talented people can put out a really fun game. Let's tighten that window a little bit and see where's that threshold of, okay, now we've pushed them too far to, they can still do the highest quality. And that turned into every 6 months, which was a little tough sometimes, but not for Band Hero.
I mean, yeah, for that short amount of time, I mean, of course, it's not like, you know, doing new textures, new art styles, but, you know, 6 months shouldn't be nothing for Activision, right?
I would guess because of that, like, for something like Guitar Hero 5 that has, like, 85 songs on it, and then Band Hero that's got 65 songs on it, like, that's a hefty number of songs to have to, A, note track, and B, mocap a decent amount of them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot. And our set list is
all-around time is impressive.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's just an incredible team of people, and we all felt, Joel, the head of Neversoft, there was a rule at Neversoft, like you never worked on the weekends unless you wanted to, and I think it was like only occasionally would we do crunch on a Friday, something like that. He was really adamant about the team not sleeping there if they didn't need to. And of course, every video game, when you get down to closer to the release date, you'll see they've got their cots, they're sleeping there, they're working 12, 14, 16-hour days. And we certainly had those, but Joel kept that to a minimum. And I think that was brilliant because had he not been able to stave off some of the I'm making Activision the boss in this whole conversation. I'm grateful for Activision, but it comes down from the top, and they're setting timelines, and they're saying we expect these games to be out, and these games have to release on this date because we have to advertise it for the Christmas market. So they have a lot going on that we have to hit, and Activision would obviously say, well, if you guys fell behind, you're going to have to make that time up because we can't move out this Christmas ship movement. There's a lot of numbers based upon this. So we worked really hard constantly. Joel kept us from working crazy hours, and the studio just hired really, really good people. And that combination could let us get a game out every 6 months.
Yeah, very interesting.
Oh wait, hold on. Give me a second.
Yeah. So, anyways, so basically, like, well, you guys' next game, which is Guitar Hero Wars of Rock. Um, Unfortunately, being the last Guitar Hero game for the temporarily before freestyle games had to reboot the game. Do you by any chance knew it was going to be the last game for the franchise by any chance?
Not at the beginning. But it was, we were all friends at the studio, and I remember towards the end when we found out it was going to be the last game. There was a lot of people that were going to be cut. Many of the people stayed in different positions, but you don't need a MIDI designer on Call of Duty, So they used to joke when we go walking to get our lunch, you would just hear people yell, "Dead man walking." It used to crack me up. It was a scary time, but I liked the way everybody kind of picked on us. But what was really cool about that game when we realized that this was pretty much it. I call it Guitar Hero 6. That's Guitar Hero 6, right? That one.
Yes, that is.
I'm not jumping ahead. I can never remember the titles. It was a band. When the word came down that this was the last one, there's a natural attitude to say, well, they're going to let me go, so why do I care? We didn't do that. It was a silent. The team just loved what we did. And instead, you just saw all of us going, well, then we're going to do what we want. And we're going to make this the best game that we could possibly make. So we threw all caution to the wind and just said, we're going to do it the way we think it should be done. And, it's a gamble because maybe the fans will say, hey, this isn't the greatest game, and that's on us if we didn't deliver. But we also have the safety of, well, this is the last hurrah, so let's just do it. And also, when the layoffs came through, inevitably, a lot of people were laid off and paid to stay at home and search for a job. They did not do that with the MIDI designers. We had to stay. We had to finish the game. They incentivized us to stay, but we weren't at home looking for other jobs. We were like, well, let's just kick this thing out and just do it the way we want to do it. So I'm pretty proud of that game from that aspect.
No, that design philosophy turned out beautifully. That's still to this day like my favorite Guitar Hero game, and that design philosophy worked in execution. I can't really think of anything to fault the game on, really. I mean, maybe it's difficulty considering over those 93 songs in the game, but I mean, it's well done. Y'all put y'all's heart and soul into it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we had the sliding guitar on that. I remember. I'm trying to remember why I remember note tracking. Well, so I'm about to bring up a song. I don't remember which game it's on. So, pardon me if it's on the wrong game. But it's Oh, no, it isn't. It's on an earlier game. It's Do It Again. Isn't Do It Again's on what? 5?
You're right.
World Tour. Okay. We have this. Did we have the sliding guitar on that one?
Yes.
Yeah. That was the game that introduced it.
Never mind. Anyway, I was going to talk about how I designed that one so that the keyboard part, you would lay the guitar on your lap and use the slide to play like the keyboard parts.
Oh, that's cool.
But I thought that was part of our independent design philosophy for Guitar Hero 6. I can't remember what game's on what. But yeah, I do remember that about Guitar Hero 6, though. We were just like, F it, we're going to do it our way and see what happens. And we really stuck to it.
Well, you guys went wild and it went over well.
Awesome. Thank you. It's good to know.
Yeah, you guys, by the way, this is practically like the best Guitar Hero game because it literally has the best guitar, bass, drums, and the vocals are absolutely perfect, if anything.
The engine is so consistent, no matter what what instrument you play on. The engine is so consistent.
Yeah.
Well, it's a testament that if you let people do what they came to do, they're going to do it well. Hire the right people, let them do their work, have faith in them. They're going to put out something good.
Yeah. Okay, so I think Addy has a really interesting question regarding some leftover vocals, if anything. So, if you want to ask him right now, which is the harmonies stuff.
Yes. So
I'll be right back.
in there, like, since the game's been released and like modding is kind of popular, like we've gotten our hands on like a debug executable, and in the debug there are references to backup vocals in Warriors of Rock, and I'm wondering how far along was that feature, because it looked like it was planned. Because some songs, like some downloadable content songs, even have like a backup chart. You just can't play them.
Yeah, I do remember a little bit about that. Again, so in the game, we didn't release the backup vocals, right? You couldn't do two people singing at the same time. If I remember correctly, it was because the engine was going to suffer to try to get that to happen. I do remember that there was this idea that you would be in a room with your friends and you'd be on the mic and you'd have like the visual that we created was like you've got like 2 or 3 friends sitting on a couch with microphones as well, and we wanted everybody to get involved. And we definitely tracked some of that stuff, but I think it was just basically because we realized, and I might be speaking out of turn here, but I think it was just basically we realized the engine was just going to make that game harder, and we weren't interested in doing that. We wanted this to go out and be the best game that we ever put out.
Because if that feature was implemented, you and Alan Flores wouldn't have had to have that A/B situation you mentioned earlier.
I would have found another one just to give him a hard time.
You could have charted Africa maybe by that's right, yeah.
Which, speaking of which, by the same year, Rock Band 3 came out, which I actually wanted to hear your opinion about this. So, when the first Rock Band came out in 2007 alongside Guitar Hero 3, do you guys ever try out the game? That's practically the first ever game to have like full band in it, where you can actually play the 4 instruments. So, I don't know, did that idea came from that game, or was it all just in-house, if anything?
It was the natural progression for the game to go. I don't know who influenced who. I know that there's a kind of thought out there that Rock Band and Guitar Hero were at odds with each other, but that was not the case. I mean, I don't assume it was the case for them as well, but I do understand how sad that is when Activision bought it up and brought us someplace else. That had to really hurt. I get that. And it's good to have good competition in the space because it causes you to step up your game and try to, outdo them, like the Beatles doing Sgt. Pepper's because they heard the Beach Boys, Yeah, I don't, I have a very faint recollection that we heard that it was going to be a band thing, but I know that we were already working on band instruments on 3. We were already trying to figure out how to pull things in. 3 was our gateway to, we're going to take this franchise and we're going to really just blow it out of the water. So working from a band standpoint, we were already discussing those options during Guitar Hero 3.
Yeah.
And so it's just natural progression.
3 is one of my favorite ones too.
Yeah. But there's like a lot of when you play Guitar Hero 3, there is like a lot that you see, like, the singer has full animated mouth movements, and the drummer seems to be animated on a per limb basis when you dig into the file. So like it seemed like there was already like kind of precursors to the full band stuff when you dig deep into 3. Is that kind of
absolutely? Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think this is I think it's been long enough to share this. There was a legal reason why we had to do the video engine the way we did it because of copyright protection. We had to get around. I say we. I wasn't involved, obviously, at all. But during that discovery of how we're going to do the graphic engine of the characters, I'm sure that's when they were like, well, because we have to do it this way, that gives us the ability to do this and these individual limbs. And I'm speaking out of turn there because it wasn't anything I was involved with. But I can imagine that because of what we had to do to create our own game and still be legal, that it opened a lot of doors. And we were definitely talking about full band instruments. Obviously, Guitar Hero is called Guitar Hero and it's fun, but don't you want to play the drums to that? That's where it really started, was like, I want to play drums to that song, Yeah, we were doing that on Guitar Hero 3. It just finally came out on Guitar Hero 4, finally figured out how to do it.
Yeah. So, I want to go before we go into our questions sections, but supposedly Vicarious Vision was supposed to lead the next Guitar Hero, which is Guitar Hero 7. I think you already know they're the company who ported the Wii port, the console. I think they even did the first few of the World Tour era engines to the PS2. Actually, no, I think some of them was made by Budcat, but anyways, the point is, I heard, I think was it from Alan Flores that maybe like some of the Neversoft employees moved on to Vicarious Vision to work on the next Guitar Hero game. By any chance, were you involved by any chance on that, or do you have to move in another company and just do any other game or something from your own end, if anything?
Yeah, they. I was one of the 6 that Vicarious Visions hired. They hired 1 artist and 5 MIDI designers. It was who was it? It was Jeff Enkel, who sadly isn't with us any longer. It was me. It was David Stowwater. This is embarrassing. I'm going to have a hard time with these names. Gosh, isn't that terrible what my brain does that? It just shuts down suddenly. But there was...
I don't blame you.
There was... Oh, yeah. Jordan Sapp was another one. Man, he's had a heck of a career. He went into Christian rock, and he's like winning Grammys and living in Nashville. Anyway, there's somebody I'm leaving out. If they see this, I'm so sorry. I'm 55. I'm using that excuse all the time now. So yeah, they hired 6 of us, and we went out to Albany, New York. Bought a house out there, and to be honest, though, this is a dark time for Guitar Hero. We could see the writing on the wall. When we arrived, they had already designed a guitar that had 6 strings, 6 buttons, and they were playing songs that we could never get rights to, like the Eagles or Led Zeppelin. And it was just such a fight. It was such a creative fight. I have a lot of respect for that studio. I really do. And I respect that they wanted to create it in their own image, which was 100%. But there was the game died, and it died because the design philosophy was off. And when we would, to be honest, it didn't involve us a lot of that game either. I did a lot with ended up working on DJ Hero for the 3DS. We were the start of the Skylander stuff. They utilized us in other departments because they would involve us with Guitar Hero, but not as much. And maybe some of them were involved more than me, but it was a weird time. It was a weird time, and it felt disjointed, and it felt like they were really set. The team that was there before the 6 of us came on, they were really set in the way they were going to do it. And I'm sure that they're very proud of what they did. But I all of us could see writing on the wall. When we first got there, they put us all in a room. We had a whiteboard, and we were really just going crazy trying to say, well, how can we make 6 strings work? We were gung-ho to try to do it, but it just was like, that becomes so complicated. You're playing guitar at that point, but with just 5 buttons and 6 strings, it's going to be tough. And so we, some of us ended up working on other games inside the studio, like I did. And then Activision came and checked it out. And we heard that they didn't like it, but said, keep going, and checked it out again. We heard that keep going. And then suddenly we got the news that the whole thing's come to an end.
Yeah.
I was going to say something and I totally forgot what it was. It literally was just in my head and I just totally forgot. Oh yeah, I was gonna say that's like the classic saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I guess it was being tried to be fixed even though it wasn't broken.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you some cool things that they did that I loved. Is it had a New York flair to it. Like it was I don't know if you saw any screenshots of it, but it was like in an apartment. And like a warehouse apartment, that was the setting, and you would pick, the song set list from there, and it had some beautiful graphics to it. It gave it, well, we had this kind of like West Coast kind of feel to Guitar Hero, they added an East Coast flair that was just beautiful. And some of the songs that were going to be in the game were just going to be incredible. We didn't have in the game before, a lot of punk stuff that we didn't have. There was a lot good about that game. I think what killed it was the push for the guitar to change. And I don't even know if that's Vicarious Visions, because, you know, there was always a new guitar each game, you know, like with the slider, or what was it, a purple button that came in later? Or that might have been Vicarious.
That was on the GH7 controller. What's the purple button? That was the sixth button. Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was still 5 fret up until after GH6, and then I heard somewhere that the controllers for Guitar Hero 7 were like so expensive to make that it was impossible to get it to the point where like your average consumer could buy one, which I guess that makes sense considering 6 buttons and 6 strings, which how do you map that to a controller is an interesting design question. You kind of can't, there's not enough buttons for that.
I think if the Vicarious Visions team before we got there would have pulled back a little bit, I think they bit off more than they can chew, and it paid for it in the end. And I think primarily it's because of that guitar. But they had some really beautiful design aesthetics, and they did have some songs that they wanted to put in the game that were really cool. I bet if they look back, there's a lot of people there who would say, I wouldn't change a thing. And then there's some people who would say, I would change.
Were you there the day Neversoft closed its doors and burned the eyeball?
Yeah, for sure.
I was
what was that? There's a term for that. There's a day that we reference when we talk about that. Yeah, Joel shot a arrow into the eyeball.
Viking funeral?
Yeah. I can't remember what we call it.
That was the death of the Neversoft eyeball. There's a bunch of videos on YouTube. So, I want to talk about the Guitar Hero 7. So, you mentioned that you knew it was supposed to be a 6-string gameplay. By any chance, I'm not sure if you can see my phone, but do you ever seen this prototype of the 6-string guitar?
Oh no, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah,
it looks cool though, but I wouldn't play.
Oh yeah, I've seen that too.
It's using the body of an Epiphone. I think that's the case, and there's like an actual speaker in the center, and and it's weird. It's doing the same thing that Rock Band 3 did with their Pro Mustang. They were just like actual 6-string buttons, only that you actually have like a 6-fret buttons instead of like mimicking like an actual guitar, which is like you know what Rocksmith is, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yep. So, you never knew that they show you like a prototype guitar or any pictures of it or any drawings?
No, what happened is VV came to Neversoft, and we were working on 6, and sorry, that clock's going off again. We were working on 6, and they said we gotta hire some people from Neversoft to come over. I don't know if that's something that Activision told them they had to do, or if they were interested in doing it. And so they held these interviews, and during the interview, the impression that I was left with was that we were going to be a very small team. They couldn't hire the whole team, sadly. I was literally the last person they interviewed. I remember I was married at the time, and I was talking to my wife, and I said, do I even go? Because we had just bought a house up here, up the coast a little bit from LA. And, it doesn't hurt to interview was the philosophy. And I went to that interview, and the impression I got from it was, you're going to come out here and make the Guitar Hero you want to make. And if you remember, for 6, we were like making the Guitar Hero we wanted to make. And that's really what sold me. I was left with the impression that they hadn't even started. So when I arrived at VV, I thought, let's dig in, let's go. And then they handed a guitar to us. I'm like, holy cow, what's this thing? We didn't know this. They'd already been using it. They'd already been working with it. Yeah. So we didn't know about the guitar until after we arrived.
Also, I just looked up the date when Neversoft went defunct, July 10th, 2014. Apparently, that was 20 years to the day of its founding.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
With the remaining employees attending a burning of a sculpture of the skewered eyeball from their logo that has been part of their offices before. I bet that was an interesting day.
Remaining employees and past employees and friends. I want to add that wiki page.
Yeah. Yeah, write a Wikipedia article about whatever you want. But
yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah. So yeah, how about let's go into the community questions then. All right. Let's go with the first few like a little bit, but what still good. So let's see. Yeah, what? Okay, so this is a very interesting question by Bayon. What aspect of the vocal engine were you most proud of or satisfied with? This can't even be some hidden technical aspect that's not normally visible to players.
Did I mention that the vocal team was the best team? I just wanted to see if I mentioned that. That overall, there is no one part of that engine that was that stood out as being a favorite to me. It was the idea that the vocal Guitar Hero was fun. Playing the drums is a blast, but there's something about everybody singing that we brought that, for lack of a better term, we brought that karaoke aspect of the unity of. I still do this occasionally when I see Guitar Hero up at a bar. You know, you go to a bar and there's people who are singing in the back of the bar, and they don't have the guitars out, but they're just having a blast singing. You know, we really brought kind of the vocal engine kind of created a larger community. That's the thing I'm most proud of.
Oh yeah, I would imagine so. Let's see. So Slurpwist asks, favorite memory working on the team?
Oh yeah, I was gonna point that one out. Yeah.
I don't have just one.
Well, I guess it can be more than one.
Yeah, I loved it when you. So I was intimidated by the owner of the studio, Joel. I became friends with Joel after Neversoft because working there, there's this guy with a handlebar mustaches and a baseball cap on and cami, and he's the kindest, sweetest guy. And if he's just standing still, you think, is he going to punch me in the face? I can't tell, because he's just so Joel. And so one of my favorite memories, at least the first one comes to mind, is anytime he had an announcement to make, he would pick, our intercom system was our phones, and he'd pick up his phone and you hear this squelching feedback, and then he would like say something in his classic Joel style, which is, you know, you felt like, is he mad at me? Did I do something wrong? How's he mad at the whole studio? He just had such a kind of like, his facade was like grumpy, even though he wasn't. And that was the crazy thing. I imagine he probably was like, why don't people just come talk to me? And he always had an open door policy. If you had an issue with anything, you had an idea, you could literally walk in his office that he shared with other people. He didn't have an office. So I have so many fond memories of Joel and his transparency. We never had a question as to how the game was doing and what the bonuses were good, the bonuses were bad. He was always really upfront. That's one of my favorite memories. Gosh, here's another great memory and story. So when I started working on Guitar Hero, I had been independent working in games, but I had to keep a day job, and that day job was in corporate America as a computer programmer, as a software developer. And when I came to my first day at Neversoft, we were all Joel gathered for a team meeting that everybody go into that kitchen area with the half pipe. And so my first day happened to be a day they were doing that. They didn't do it because I was hired, obviously. But so I'm sitting in the back, just being all shy and kind of nervous. I don't know anybody. And then Joel said, and he's standing out front, and I'm like in this kitchen area, and there's a bunch of people, a bunch of tables, and then a bunch of people facing Joel. And he goes, oh yeah, we got some new hires. I think we had more than one. And then he said my name, and I walked up because I thought, in corporate America, I've got to kind of say hi to everybody, and I'm so happy to be here. And there's this kind of like thing you do, not at Neversoft. So Joel is standing on the mic, or I think it was a mic anyway, and he goes, yeah, introducing a new hire we got, Kyle Johnson. And then you can hear my chair squirt out as I'm standing up, and I'm walking through people and going, and Joel's just watching me like I'm an idiot. He's like, what's this guy doing? Just waiting on me to come up to him. And so I walked up and I stood beside him, and I was like, hey, everybody, like you would in corporate America. And Joel's just looking at me like, this guy's an idiot. what is he doing up here? All he wanted to say is we hired a new guy. And so I then realized my faux pas, and I just kind of, snuck back to my table, sat down. And at the end of the meeting, the first person that really just took me under his wing was Jeff Swente. He came up and he goes, "Yeah, you got some balls on you, man. Come up here and do that." He said, "I owe you a drink," and we've been friends ever since. And I remind Joel of that on occasion, and he goes, "Oh, I don't remember that," because he's so nice. I'm like, yeah, you do. That was another fun memory.
So before we almost end our sessions, we have another question right here. If anybody wants to ask after this one. Here, Doty says, "Hey Kyle, good to see you on the podcast. I hope you like what we've done in the Resurrecting the Beloved franchise, and I personally salute you for your work on the games. And I have a small question. What do you think of Rick Rubin's mixing on songs outside of Guitar Hero?"
Oh, I do know that is. Rick Rubin's mixing, I don't know. I know him as, the producer that he is. He's very inspirational. Rick Rubin has philosophies. This is my career now, so this is where I'm spending all my time, most of my time. So Rick Rubin's philosophy of serving yourself is something that we need to do in our lives all the time. We worry about what people think of us. We worry about how well something will sell. We worry about if we're good enough for something. And Rick Rubin seems like his mission is to go to every artist, big and small, and just say, do it what you want to do. And I swear by that philosophy, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of respect for Rick Rubin. And he keeps getting involved with and releasing fantastic albums. That Johnny Cash album was incredible. I mean, he's just done so many great things. And of course, start with the Beastie Boys. You can't beat that. But yeah, a lot of respect for Rick Rubin.
Very cool. Oh yeah, this one. Okay, so let me see. So Johnny Sanchez 97 asks, "It's true that you don't have enough time to work and develop more properly with Vocals Engine because Activision had a greedy deadline? Oh, and some future or current projects, work of yours that you wanna or even can share?"
Yeah. Well, I'm finally releasing an album of my own songs. So I've been deep on that. I've been doing a lot of mixing for other people and being behind the scenes. But so the thing I'm doing now is I have a producer out of London who is an amazing producer, works with Brian Ferry primarily, but has worked with all kinds of people, Mark Knopfler and stuff. And he and I and my friend Sam, I'm playing all the instruments except Sam's playing the drums, and just the three of us are going to do this album. And he comes here in November and to record it, and I go to London to mix it, which I'm super excited about. It's kind of a bucket list thing. I'm really happy to release an album of my own stuff and not work on other people's stuff for a minute, which is really cool. So that's what's going on with me.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Do we have any other questions before we finish the session? Have anything?
I have two more questions, but if you don't want to keep hearing me talk, I can open the room to other.
I think you should keep talking.
Things. What's that?
I think you should keep talking.
Okay, I will then. So this actually goes back. So I did some research on you. It's not stalking. It's just research for the interview. And I came across your LinkedIn page, and you had mentioned that you had designed a Ableton note tracking rack. So these days in the custom scene, there's many options for creating note tracks. I myself use Reaper. I know plenty of people use Moonscraper or Editor on Fire. And I was just wondering what it was like to design a note tracking rack while you were investigating your DAW options. And then once you found one, what did you guys end up settling with?
We settled on Sonar.
Oh yeah, Chris fans told us about that.
Yeah, we had the ability to it came down to, so I'm a big lover of Ableton, although I spend most of my time in Pro Tools. And I'll send you my Ableton rack if anybody's curious. Just let me know where to send it and to look at it. But if I remember correctly, we settled on Sonar because you could name each MIDI channel, and you couldn't do that in the other ones. You could say like red button, yellow button, but you couldn't do that in other ones. We made it a little bit easier. Yeah. It was fun. I love Ableton, so I thought, well, let me just see if I can do it there. But there was going to be a big change to include it and to do it in Ableton. There was a lot of reasons not to use it, but I'll send it to you guys if you're curious.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. If nobody has any other questions,
Well, I got one more question then. This is more of a fun one, but while you were working at Neversoft, if you could steal an item from there, what would you have stolen, or did you?
Oh, I stole loads of stuff. No, I didn't. You got to understand, this place was a blast to work at. There was little what's the word? Tricks being played on people constantly. I can't think of the trick. One of them that I think I would have stolen was that somebody put a poster of a tiki mask, a giant tiki mask on the back of one of the bathroom stalls. And I remember when I went in there for the first time and I shut that door, I was like, holy shit, what the hell is this? And that became that was my phone background for a long time. Yeah, that was really fun. There were always some practical joke happening somewhere. But there's got to be something more I would steal. What would I steal? Yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind. I'd really steal that. And they gave us stuff constantly, so we didn't have to steal anything. There was just always some swag or something that there were just always. Yeah, I'd steal. I'd steal that tiki mask. To this day, I want to know who did it. If you guys can get on the with all your amazing skills scouring the internet, find out who put that tiki poster on the back of the bathroom stall.
I bet that startled the living hell out of you when you saw that.
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention when I opened the door, I then shut the door and turn around and it's staring at me and I'm like, all right, this is going to be a fun time. And but yeah, the guitar that we worked on, that ended up going to Anthony Campos. What an amazing guy. He just had a baby. And he gifted that to me. I'll cherish that. There was just so much they gave us. It really wasn't. I want to know what that tiki mask is.
That was are there any of the guests that have been muted the whole time that have anything to ask?
Yeah. Mr. Kyle Johnson, very big honor to meet you. I'm so sorry I would have appeared way earlier if I didn't go back to sleep. I'm very sorry.
No worries. No worries.
I
It's
got
late.
2 questions that I hope aren't already asked. One, it's very basic. Who was your favorite character out of the series, if you had any?
That's not been asked.
Well, I'm kind of partial to Santana because I got to be Santana. I love the idea of switching out the people. You could be Ozzy Osbourne singing a Taylor Swift song. I thought that was pretty cool. One of my favorite note tracks I did was Billy Idol, Rebel Yell. So even though not a character, that was my favorite note track I did. Yeah, I'd say I like the idea of switching them out, really.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question on what was your favorite song to note track. But yeah, thank you for answering that as well. Really appreciate it.
I read your mind.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Killed 2 birds with 1 stone with that one.
All right. Well, if that's out of the way, thank you again, Kyle, for joining us for today. Before we go, do you have any socials to promote for anybody who might be interested in your work?
Yeah, keep an eye on We Spies. I'm on that's the music project I'm doing now. I'm on Twitter and everything. It's either We Spies together or We_Spies. I just spend a lot of time on my Instagram or Atmosonic or MT Kyle. You'll find me under MT like Moontech, MT Kyle or Atmosonic but We Spies is where it's all happening for me. And then September 1st, I'm releasing a Patreon for We Spies to kind of give away a monthly song. So I'm recording a cover of a song every month leading up to the album and trying to get people to get used to the We Spies sound and see if they're interested in what's going on. So yeah, keep an eye on those socials and you'll see things coming out.
All right. Well, thank you, Kyle, for joining us. And thank you all guys for watching this session. I hope everybody has enjoyed this. And until then, I'll see you next time. Thank you.